Welcome back. Anglo American has rejected yet another buyout offer from BHP. This is the third proposal put forward by the Australian miner, where it's made it clear that it's gunning for Anglo's copper assets. Anglo American, in the meantime, has given BHP reprieve, extending its deadline to next week, Wednesday. And joining me now to discuss the moves at play in the mining sector is Chief Investment Officer at All Weather Capital, Shane Watkins. Thank you so much for your time, Shane. Now, I've been unpacking this deal with you for the last few weeks. So let's actually talk about the terms of the new deal that BHP proposed, because it's actually quite interesting. A lot of people were expecting that now they'd come out with a cash component and not still go with this all-share offer. Talk to me about how attractive, firstly, the terms are at this point in the third proposal.
Good evening, Zanati. So I think in the first instance, if you just look at the deal structure, the deal structure is not that attractive because it's an all-share offer and it's highly conditional. Normally the best transaction would be a proposal that is all cash and unconditional.
Yeah.
So this is conditional upon them unbundling Kumba and Amplats, and it's for BHP shares. There's no cash component. So from a structure perspective, it's not an attractive proposition for Anglo American shareholders in that sense.
And it's quite interesting because Anglo American also says there's a lot of risk in terms of now having to basically unbundle two listed companies. How much risk, would Anglo American have to take here? But also considering the regulatory approvals, would that make it quite difficult for BHP?
Well, that's essentially what the Anglo board is saying. They're saying that there's a lot of risk in the structure and conditionality, and they refer to an 18-month timeline where a lot can happen in that time, especially given that it's a share offer, not a cash offer.
Does this now mean that BHP might actually just decide to just stand back? Because now it's the third offer. I do understand that Anglo American has said that they're extending the deadline. Maybe it's a case of delayed but not denied. But do you think that BHP at this point is not getting wary of these rejections?
So look, I think BHP want this transaction to go ahead, no doubt about it. A little bit tongue-in-cheek, I want to say that the advisors to Anglos and BHP want this transaction to go ahead as well, because it would be a terrific payday.
Yeah.
I think the board of Anglos is more ambivalent about it, but if you read what Anglo American have said, they've gone from an outright rejection to talking about risk mitigation.
Okay.
And so it appears to me that there's a possibility that they can get this transaction done under certain circumstances. Of course, the TRP in the UK has only given them a 7-day extension, and ironically, that extension expires on the national election day in South Africa, which is the 29th. So given that there will be some government approvals required in this transaction, or at least some informal undertakings to give approvals, I think it's highly unlikely that a transaction can be agreed by the 29th. I just don't think you're going to get the government ministers in a room to give you those undertakings, given that they are electioneering.
It's quite interesting that you say that the language has basically gone from outright rejection to risk mitigation. Is this also a signal of Anglo American knowing very well that especially now that they've come out with this new restructure that will make it a leaner and meaner machine, the knowledge that there will be a target takeover anyway, so they might as well, talk some more with BHP?
Look, I think, the board has a fiduciary obligation to look at all alternatives that will be good for the company and for shareholders. And I think they now realize that they're into a process, and they're now discussing, I guess, with BHP advisor to advisor, how they can mitigate some of these risks that the board has raised. They've also said that this is a final offer, but the offer can be increased if the board of Anglo American recommend that increase. So in a sense, it's an offer that can't be increased, but it can be increased. But only if the board of Anglos recommend that higher offer. So there is a way for BHP to raise this third offer in a fourth offer, but provided that the Anglos board then recommends that raised offer.
Is Kumba Iron Ore worth the tussle?
Well, I think the bigger concern is around the unbundling of Amplats, well, and Kumba, but I mean, Amplats is a bigger company. And I think the concern really is around the flowback that would happen. What I mean by that is foreign shareholders receiving Kumba or Amplat shares somewhere in the world, selling those shares, and that money, once it's sold, because it has to be sold on the JSE, that's where these shares trade, that money then being remitted outside of South Africa. And people have estimated that the amount of money that would flow out of South Africa it could be as high as 200 billion rand. I mean, to give you a sense of proportionality, I mean, our GDP is 7 trillion, so 200 billion is not an insignificant amount of money.
Shane, do you think that there's a price that BHP could get to where Anglo American would be willing to unbundle both Kumba Iron Ore and Amplats at the same time?
I think that certainly the Anglos' defense has been more around the structure than the price.
Okay.
And there would have to be some kind of adjustment to the structure, because let's be dead honest, the Anglo shareholders do bear all of that risk. I mean, before they get their BHP shares, we've first got to go through a process where Kumba and Amplats are unbundled, and that requires a whole lot of approvals. And in that unbundling process, let's say the share prices of Kumba and Amplats fell significantly. Those losses fall on the Anglo American shareholders, not on the BHP shareholders. So there would have to be some kind of structure or some kind of process where the Anglo's board has comfort that this unbundling won't give rise to such significant flowback or significant price declines in those shares.
Well, I hope that the BHP powers that be are listening, and of course we'll get more information on that next week. Thank you so much for your time and just unpacking those news that came out this afternoon for us, Shane. That was Shane Watkins from All Weather Capital.